The world is telling us as men to be common, to fall in line, to fall short of any visions or plans God has for us. But what about being uncommon? This is a movement of men seeking to build an eternal legacy, a journey of men on mission to rise above the common, to experience sustainable life change. This is Uncommon Disciple. Welcome to the Uncommon Disciple podcast. My name is Michael Bowen, and with me today is my buddy Matt Stack. What's up, Matt?
Hey, man. Good to see you.
So we're sitting here drinking some Jocko Discipline Goes.
Yes.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's good to be back.
It's good to see you. I'm honored to be here.
You know, it's been a little while since we picked this podcast back up, and we've been praying about some things, you know, as a family and what we're doing here at the Jiu-Jitsu Academy and the cafe. But we met each other at the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu event here.
Yes.
How long ago was that? Do you remember?
Gosh, it must have been 8-9 months ago, which, funny enough, some random dude showed up to where we do jiu-jitsu and told us about it. And it turned into this last minute, didn't know who was going to show up. I invited my entire group of guys.
Yeah.
And I ended up being the only one who showed up. I didn't know anyone. And then you and I connected that day.
Sure.
It was about 9 months ago.
Yeah, so anyone listening, if you haven't heard the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu podcast, go take a look at that wherever you listen in on podcasts. But so Matt and I met each other. We kicked it off, and he has twins.
Yes.
Right. Speak a little bit to your family.
Yeah. So my wife and I, we've got a lot going on. So long story short, we have got 4 beautiful kids. But to tell a quick, cool God story on it, when we were first trying to have kids, we had a couple miscarriages, and I don't think I was being a very supportive husband. I think I was trying to be a man of faith. You know, I was trying to speak and declare what was about to be. So we had lost the child, and my wife was, you know, grieving, but I didn't know how to comfort her. So I basically was dealing with that until a lady in my church was like, "You need to go get with God." And I thought, "Oh my gosh, you're right." So I remember praying and worshiping God. And I heard a clear word from Isaiah, "Behold, I'll do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall you not know it? I'll even make a road in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." And I came to my wife and I was like, "Babe, this is our word."
Yes.
And 9 months later, our son was born. But then the Holy Spirit showed me a vision of a little boy, a little girl, and then twins. So I came to my wife years ago and I was like, "Hey, babe, just so you know, it's going to be 2 and then it's going to be twins." She was like, "Whatever." Until she came back from the ultrasound. And we both just fell over. I can remember that day when she went, I remember thinking to God, "Is this true? Are we going to have twins?" And I heard him speak to me and he said, "Just watch." Yeah. And she came back. So 4 beautiful kids, 2 dogs, a cat, and 6 chickens, which would have been 7 chickens had a fox not gotten it and turned me into a psycho.
You should have brought some eggs with you.
I know.
You know
It's amazing. All
that.
right, I got you covered. Yeah. I got you.
So guys, Matt also is an author. He wrote an awesome killer book that you can hear on Audible, order on Amazon.
Yep.
I got my copy directly from him. It's called Killing Chaos.
Yes.
He's a Marine Corps veteran.
Yep.
And so is my wife, so they have a lot in common when they get together.
Chaos.
But the twin story comes in because, you know, our daughter Taya, who just turned 18 years old, is a surviving twin. And so when my wife and I meet a couple with twins, it really, you know, there's a spotlight that goes onto it, and we're drawn to couples that have twins, and just, you know, not from a we wish Angelina had survived, but as a, man, this is awesome. She always, you know, she's got 1,000 questions for the wives, and I know that, well, there was a lot of chaos during Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu with your kids.
Yes.
Right?
If you saw it. I can remember you're sharing your story with me in the parking lot. I'm crying. And then my wife is like wrangling the children. And we had just brought our puppy. I mean, it was...
Yeah. We'll do a better job, like, having a jumping house or something, you know, one of these events, so you can just,
throw
hey kids, just throw them in there, lock the door, and see where they go.
Thunderdome.
But, you know, it's interesting, when I was reading your book and listening to it, I could relate a lot to it. Because I think anyone that's been in the military or law enforcement, you know, when you go into boot camp, right? It's this process of breaking you down, building you up, breaking you down. And so the cycle continues through our military career. And then we wonder why, when we get out, so many veterans start to suffer and struggle.
100%.
And you were able to identify it fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Was it how quickly?
Well,
was it 8 years? I forget. Yeah. I think you said 8 years in the book, if I remember correctly.
That's about right.
But 1 Corinthians 14 says, "For God is not a God of disorder, but of peace." Right. So He's not a God of chaos, if you will. And so, when you think about that, if I'm honest, I seek peace in my life, right? If there's chaos in my life, it's usually that God's trying to get my attention and do a work. The enemy's attacking me, or it's of my own self-doing.
Yeah.
And a lot early in my getting out of the military, a lot of it was my own self-doing. Like I was just building up and going, it's too quiet, too peaceful.
Yes, something's wrong.
I need to knock it down, right? It's like building this perfect model and then just destroying it, saying, all right, I'm going to try to put it back together.
And then everyone around you is going,
they're going, they're left picking the pieces up. Yes. So talk to us a little bit about, what inspired the book. And there's everyone listening, I just want you to know there's probably going to be a couple of parts to this podcast. We're going to have Matt back in like 2 weeks. We just talked about it and we're praying through it. So there's going to be a to be continued. I'm just giving everyone a heads up. So Matt, just talk to us a little bit about what inspired the book. I know you're helping, a number of veterans, that are struggling, but how the book ministered to you even as you were writing it and helped you identify and come to terms with this idea of building up and getting out of living a life of chaos, if you will. Killing it.
Yes.
Right?
Killing
Squashing it, destroying it, burying it.
Yes. And it hits every veteran. I mean, I think there's a stigma that comes around, like what level of things did you do in the military? Like, because I think there's a stigma that only a person in combat would have that level of PTSD. And, like, for instance, in my career, I work at a mental health clinic, and the Space Force, of all things, just announced their first 2 suicides. And I remember, and if I'll be honest, when I first joined the clinic, I thought the Space Force is needing mental health counseling. And I mean, these guys, I didn't think about it, but a lot of these people are getting top secret clearances and they're seeing things that humans are not meant to see on a consistent basis, not meant to talk about on a consistent basis, and they have nowhere to go with that.
Sure.
So for me, if you take me back to the Marine Corps time, I was very fortunate at the time that I was getting out of the Marine Corps. I was very fortunate and blessed to become a sergeant in a quick time. So I was a sergeant getting out in 2003 and no idea what I wanted to do. And at that time, I had started attending an amazing church. It was a Holy Spirit-filled church.
Were you saved in the military?
Good question. I got saved very early on. It was in my A school, of all things, or my C school in North Carolina. I got saved, but I'm embarrassed to say it.
So they call the advanced schools A and C schools, just like the Navy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So my A school was in Pensacola, and then my C school, if I'm not mixing them up, was in North Carolina. And I remember being in North Carolina and just getting terrified one night. I think everyone has these beautiful salvation stories, but mine was more of like just driving back from my girlfriend.
Sure. And
realizing if I died right now, I would just go to hell. And remember coming back, and it's, we can talk, we can laugh about the Bible thumper and the platoon and the guy that, but let me tell you, when the stuff hits the fan, that's where you're gonna run, is that guy that is, you're like, hey, if anyone's cool with the big man upstairs, it's gonna be this guy. Yes. So I prayed with him, and then to fast forward, I did 4 years in the Marine Corps. I loved it. When I got out,
what did you do? What was your
I wanted it to be EOD. So when I went to the recruiter, I was obsessed with explosives. I was trying to make
You weren't suicidal?
Oh, I was not suicidal.
Okay.
I just was.
I'm asking because that's a job
pyro.
that you're living on the edge and you're almost, it's kind of playing Russian roulette sometimes, yes?
It is. I think my parents retired. I mean, I was a bit of a little pyro. I just was obsessed with explosives as a kid.
Or you like blowing things up?
Not that bad. Mostly like just trying to make napalm, I think, in my backyard.
There you go.
But I remember wanting to go EOD, and the recruiter said, hey, if you want to go EOD, you have to do aviation ordnance to do EOD. And I said, okay, just give me that.
Sure.
And so he said, hey, when you get to your school, just let them know.
Yeah,
Just let them know.
Yeah. Just let them know.
Just let them know.
He'll hook you up.
So I'll never forget getting to the school and talking to an instructor and saying, hey, my recruiter said to tell you.
He said, here's your toilet brush, bro. Get out of here.
But I mean, if your recruiter didn't lie to you, did you even join? I mean, like, so, sorry, I'm going around a couple tangents to bring it back. So yeah, I did aviation ordnance for 4 years, loved it. Ended up having a great group of guys that I served with, and I was fortunate as I was transitioning out to get a part of an amazing church, and it was a spirit-filled church. I had grown up Catholic my whole life. So I mean, I had gone through the sacraments, I had done confirmation.
CCD?
CCD, yep.
Okay.
I mean, CCD, I did.
I grew up in an Italian neighborhood in Philadelphia.
Yes, so. You know.
CCD, I used to just hang out with the kids who went to CCD, but
oh my gosh.
I never went to CCD.
You just gave me a flashback. I mean, no one's put those 3 letters together in years, so now, yeah. It was a great kind of start to my faith, but I remember thinking, like, there has to be more.
Yes.
There has to be more. And I ended up started going to the non-Catholic services and boot camp, and then ultimately found Demsar, who was the guy to get saved. But if I'll be honest, I was worse after I got saved than before.
Really?
Yeah, it's embarrassing to say, because I didn't have a church in C school. I didn't have a community of guys.
Did you get worse, or were you just aware of how sinful you were?
That's a good question.
Like, I think that, for me, I think that's what happened. I realized, dang, man, like, Lord, you got a lot of work to do here.
I never thought about it like that. That could be true.
Yeah.
That could be true.
Because it is. It's just that, you start to realize, you're serving and are introduced to a holy God.
Oh, yeah.
And now there's a mirror, right?
Yes.
And you're kind of like,
it's not the same as before.
So now your sin is amplified,
yes.
if you will. And
the conviction.
And so that's why I asked the question, right?
Oh.
So did you get worse, or was it just that you were more aware of how sinful you were?
I'd say definitely aware, but I can remember like moving into the world of like sleeping around. Like that was an element of like having girlfriends, sleeping around, and like going down that road and then feeling empty. I was I remember like there was like this weird shaped hole I can remember in me that didn't get filled until I accepted Christ. But I realized how important having a good church and a community is till later. Yeah. And so where the book essentially stemmed from is when I got out, I was a part of this amazing church. But it was kind of hard for me because I felt like everybody was better at me at everything. Like, it was really frustrating. It was like 7, 8 years where I felt like everyone's better at life than me, better. Sure. And this isn't like a conscious, like, conclusional thought. You just are like, I don't understand, why do I suck? Why do I suck at this? And why are they better? Why do they make more money? Why are they better at relationships? Why are they getting married? Like, all these things, and I couldn't sit still. I couldn't be in a quiet room alone. There was just this element where I would have to spend my paycheck when I got it. I'd have to just constantly have these highs and like go for these moments. And it wasn't until I was working a sales job at this place with another Marine, and his name was Charlie.
You talk about this in the book.
Yes, yeah. Charlie. So his real name was Charlie. I gave him a different name in the book.
You did give him a different name. I said, Charlie's the name of my dog. I remember Charlie, so, and I told you, I read it and I listened to it a couple times, and so I'm like, Charlie.
It just had been, for him, but now this will go out nationwide, so but we've talked, he knows about the book and everything.
We know who you are, Charlie.
We know you are, Charlie. And he was just this big old Viking of a guy, crude as can be, but would give you the shirt off his back. I think I used that line, actually. And he was going to leave his, he had a really great fiance, and he suddenly he confessed to me one day that he was going to leave her to get back with his ex-girlfriend. And even though the ex-girlfriend was crazy in his eyes, but the sex was great and all these things, and I remember just unleashing on him. I remember just being furious in the car. I think I was cussing at him, telling him he's brainwashed and all this stuff, and the Marine Corps messed him up and blah blah blah. And then it wasn't until later, I remember praying for him in the car. I remember he started crying. And I remember later on, I started processing what happened and why I was so emotional about it was because that's how I felt about me. and I was just projecting.
So there you go. There was a mirror being held.
There was a mirror being held, and that's why I got so angry about it.
And you were mad when you saw it in someone else's life. It angered you.
Which, now that I know about projecting, it's maybe the most frustrating thing, because you see it on everybody. The moment you see someone go to like an extreme emotional level in a short amount of time, it's probably because a mirror is being held up to them.
You know, it's good that you realize that. You know, I thought about having some shirts made that says like, we're all hypocrites.
Yes.
Right? Like, we all project, you know. Dude. And the quicker that the Lord reveals that to us, obviously, that's when the real work can start to begin. And when I'd asked you about, you know, did you have a realization that you were just as sinful as you were, you know, against the holy God? But that's true for me today.
Yes,
you know,
same actually.
You know, I don't want to say that I'm a worse sinner, but I just, little things that, you know, when you stop sensing that the God's, you know, nudging you on things, I think that's a dangerous place for us to be.
You know, this happened last night. I'll probably start crying about it yesterday. I will start crying probably. There was a headline that came out yesterday up on my feed, and it was about what these guys had done to some children. And it had become such a common in Texas.
Okay.
And I just sat in my office, and next thing you know, I just started bawling. I was crying.
And how evil the world is.
Yeah, and how evil the world is, and what had happened to these children. And it's amazing. You want to hear a very controversial thought, because this is a very controversial thought in Christianity. But the Marine in me saw these men, and I was like, oh, what I would do.
You're already pulling them apart.
Oh, like I was imagining it, like, and I've just done this many times. I mean, every man has. Yeah. There's not a man on the earth. Like, I had a quote the other day that I pinned on someone else, but it was my quote. I said, thank God our wives cannot see the violence we envision doing to our enemies on a daily basis. Like, thank goodness they don't go into our minds and see what we imagine doing.
Or that react on them.
Or we react on them. And I was bawling, but you know what happened last night is I've found this happen. So anytime I come across any guy who's done something horrible that I think is a terrible sin to children or to anyone, when I look at that person and I begin to hate them and begin to imagine things to them, I find I come under torment, which is biblical. Now, it's not the same as justice. I'm 100% for justice, and justice should be the death penalty on these people. Like,
but at the same time, you're thankful that justice isn't poured out on you.
100%.
As it should be.
Because I'm under grace.
Yes.
Because so the moment I move out of grace and into judgment.
Yeah. Hey, that's a controversial topic, man. Right?
Yes.
Like with who deserves grace and who doesn't, and that person, you know, shouldn't be forgiven, and you know. Dude. I think a lot of times people of faith start to become God and try to be the judge.
Oh,
and it's just and again, as I've matured in faith and you know, kind of where I'm at today, I've realized, you know, just the other day we were talking, and a guy that I really look up to in the faith, right? He said a cuss word.
Right. And
back in the day, man, my jaw would have dropped.
Oh yeah.
Right? But I know people that are super offended by cuss words in the faith.
Yeah.
Yet they're on porn. I know one guy was cheating on his wife.
Yeah.
But dude, if you said a cuss word, I can't believe, brother, you're cursing, and it's like, you know. And then I look back now, I laugh about it.
Yeah, same.
And I just go, you know, like, hey, at what point, you know, like you're in your this phase of faith that you're in, right? This maturity level, and yes, as brothers, we're supposed to be building each other up and correcting where there needs to be correction. But, you know, a lot of times I see these little pockets of Christians gathering together and coming up with, you know, well, they're doing something bad.
Right.
Instead of just saying, hey, we're all messed up.
Yes.
You know, church is like a hospital, and we are all in need of the grace of God.
Yeah.
And just for transparency purposes, and, you know, we don't have a lot of time on this podcast.
Right.
Because there's going to be a part 2. It's going to be a lot longer. You know, there was some bitterness in my heart, you know, a few months back, and I'll get more into this, you know, in the next episode, where I went through some health problems, and we had a mother. People go, hey, how's it going, man? What do you got going on? I'm like, well, let's see, I got 3 teenagers in the house, mother-in-law with dementia, I had a big health scare a few months ago. My wife just had surgery.
Yeah.
And this week I just was telling Tyler, right? He's like, how's your week been? And he already knows because we've been trying to, get together and do some things for the past couple of months. And I said, well, let's see. This week my son had a relationship that broke down. Got a call yesterday that my wife's father had a major heart attack, had to be rushed into the hospital, and she's home with the flu right now. So it's like, we have these things that we go through, and I'm thankful for the earlier, right, the earlier setbacks and struggles, because I felt like it's prepared me for what God has for me in this season. So.
And how important is it to have good godly men around you when you're going through that, and to not tell it to the wrong people, but to tell it to the one who will believe in faith with you.
100%. So, I'm just happy to see you here.
Same, man. Same, bro.
We're gonna get more into your book, obviously. Because I shared this with you, I'll be leaving for San Jose to compete, and then I'll be at the Echelon Front Muster, serving at the American Mighty Warrior table in San Diego. So if anyone's gonna be there, we should probably get this podcast out before I head out. And I look forward to seeing you stop by the American Mighty Warrior booth. Debbie Lee, who we call Mama Lee, is just doing great things over there, and I'm excited to be serving with the team she's put together. And so we'll pick this up in a few weeks.
Excited.
All right. So for those of you listening, keep listening in. We're going to keep this going, but we're grateful to be here. And if you're ever in the Castle Rock, Colorado area, pop by Balm Jitsu. We have a full schedule online. We have probably the busiest schedule in Castle Rock. We have multiple world champions that train here, and it's just a great group of family that I get to hang out with. And also, my wife and my daughter started the Omni Cafe next door. So you can not only choke or get choked, you can jump next door and get a protein shake or a boba shake, chai tea, cold brew coffee, and so. We love what God's been doing here, getting this place up and ready. So we're gonna take a break, and we'll be back with another episode here in a week or two. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, y'all. Thank you, bro.